Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to have you here. I'm Alan Locher, and welcome to the Locher Room. Actor Steven Weber is my guest, and we'll look back at his remarkable career that began in New York City, and we'll revisit one of his earliest roles as Kevin Gibson on As the World Turns. Steven can currently be seen on NBC's Chicago Med, produced by the legendary Dick Wolf, and season 10 will premiere on September 25th. His other recent credits include HBO's Ballers, Epix, Get Shorty, and a standout appearance in Curb Your Enthusiasm. You also know him from Netflix's sensation 13 Reasons Why. He is also best known for his unforgettable performance as Brian Hackett on the hit primetime NBC series Wings. He also voiced Charlie B. Barkin in All Dogs Go to Heaven series and delivered a chilling performance as Jack Torrance in The Shining. His versatility shines through in recurring roles on iZombie and NCIS New Orleans, and his unforgettable title role of Jeffrey in the 1995 LGBTQ plus classic Jeffrey. Please welcome to the Locher Room, Steven Weber. Hey, Steven.
Hi, Alan. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure. Truly, I've been a fan of yours as far back as the World Turns. So I'm curious. I mean, you have had an incredible career that goes back, almost 4 decades. Yeah. What are some of your favorite roles? And even can you put them out there?
Well, yeah, it's been over 40 years, really. Look, since you kind of led with it, I have to start with As the World Turns. I mean, I wasn't on for very long, but it was my kind of first steady working actor paying gig. I think I got $8.50 a week, which was incredible. I remember standing on the subway taking the 7 train from, I want to say, Times Square to where I was living in Long Island City, just taking the check out of the envelope and looking at it and thinking, wow, this is everything. And it kind of was. And one of the reasons why it was my favorite job is because As the World Turns was still in the, I guess, in the world of classic television production. You had a control room with editors and a director who was talking to camera people on the floor, and they would relay directions to the cameras to move right and to capture that particular actor, that angle of the scene. And then, of course, the actors who I worked with on that program, like Larry Brigman, Don Hastings, and some of the originals when I first got there had been there since radio, man. So I was working, so I was thrust into this world that I had always dreamed of being in, and there I was, and I don't know if I lasted maybe more than 8 or 9 months on the show. I was teamed up with Julianne Moore and played her love interest, and for the time, the genre, what was daring was that I was kind of a young, angry Yale graduate, a blue-collar Yale graduate who had an earring. So I had a stud in my ear, and that it caused so much tumult that they wrote in a scene where I had to there I am with that earring. They wrote a scene where I had to remove it ceremonially. That was
well. Since we started, because I was going to get there, but do you remember your audition at all?
I don't specifically remember my audition, but I was a good auditioner because I was brash and personable and had a big personality then, and I tended to ad lib and go color outside the lines. So I don't remember specifically who it was for.
Were you familiar with soaps? Like, did it?
I was. I mean, soaps was a mainstay of the culture at the time. I mean, it was said, I found out later on, maybe it was apocryphal, that soaps essentially paid for everything that the nighttime programming cost. They were huge money makers, had vast audiences, huge fan bases. So I had a kind of familiarity with it. The only thing that I ever watched when I was a kid that I glanced at was probably Dark Shadows, because very young I had even as a young person, I had kind of a twisted, dark sensibility, and that appealed to me. I never watched soaps per se, but they were ubiquitous. I mean, you heard them during the day coming out of people's homes, out of their apartment windows, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned Larry and Don. I mean, when I got to work with Don, he literally was one of the funniest men on the set. Was he? Do you recall? Was he that way back then?
He was extremely funny, extremely generous and gentle. These people were all the masters of their craft, and also in a way very accepting of a genre, of working in a genre that was always a little looked down upon by other actors. And I'm sure it had affected them to some degree, but you know what? They learned early on that steady work is so important when you're an actor, and they found steady work, and they found steady affirmation, and they had great lives. I remember especially specifically when we were shooting, I guess, my character's final episode with John Wesley Shipp and Julianne Moore and Don. We went up to an area of Connecticut that I had never been up to. And it actually was in and around the home of one of our directors, whose name is escaping me right now. And I saw that the lifestyle that the soap world afforded these actors who, again, were, it's so silly to have been looked down upon by the industry. They did so well, and there was a sense of contentment. And that's really what I remember about working with Don. Sure, he was funny, but he was a veteran by that time. I was trying to be funny, but also trying to memorize reams of dialogue. There wasn't a hell of a lot of rehearsal, and the whole experience was so kind of shocking in a way. It was intimidating. It was really intimidating.
Were you? Yeah. I mean, if you had gone from primetime to daytime, but that was, like you said, one of your first paying, was it shocking how much looked down upon, but they work harder than, most actors ever will.
It absolutely was educational when I saw how these actors were given, again, lots of dialogue, last minute stuff. And I think it really primed me for the kind of actor, at least technically, I became, or that I am, or that I'm still trying to become, which is somebody that isn't thrown necessarily, even though you might bitch for a second. Oh, God, really? And then you just do it. You stand where you're told to stand, and you go. When the red light goes on, but you speak, and you go. And part of that is, it may not be romantic and creative, but there's something really kind of tactile and basic and practical about it, and you really feel like you're doing something that's worthwhile. You really feel like an infantryman, like you're like a soldier. You may not be a general like Meryl Streep, so but you're an infantry person. You just go and you do it. You get it done, and that was really, I loved that aspect of it.
It must have helped just for the rest of your career, really, to start that way in those 9 months, and the way you learned how to.
Oh yeah, and it also gave me something to talk about and gave me something to brag about, because it was a legitimate, great early job. It's a legitimate job. Period.
So you actually say you were on such a short time, but you are truly in one of the most talked about and probably most popular stories World Turns ever did, with what Doug Marland created for that Douglas Cumming, John Wesley Shipp.
That's right.
Story. I mean, it really, to this day, I've been doing this show, started in the pandemic, and I mean, it really is still talked about with such admiration from fans. And John, John was here and talked about it, and
what a great guy.
Yeah, was grateful. We're gonna take a look at your death scene.
Oh, I'm gonna die now.
It's internal bleeding. Get a pillow and elevate his feet and get a blanket.
Okay.
Kevin can't die. He can't die. He's not going to die. Your father's doing everything in the world that he can for him. Here's the blanket.
All right, cover him up.
Okay. Franny? Honey, you think maybe we should get out of your house? No. I won't leave him. He saved my life. I won't leave him. Daddy, don't let him die. Please don't.
All right, all right.
Now, you know, tough boy from Yale is not going anywhere. He feels fine. Feels fine.
Will you ever forgive me?
Oh boy, what for?
Everything. I'm so sorry.
Nothing to be sorry about, you know. And everything to look forward to. Blue eyes.
Baby.
All right.
Do you remember any of that?
I do remember it, sure. First of all, Julianne hasn't changed. I'm like, that's creepy. Now it's creepy. Okay, I mean, people age. If you held up a picture of what she looks like today, and that, it's like, so she absolutely made a bargain with somebody. What do I remember? I mean, first of all, I remember being told by Doug Marlin when he called me into his office. He said, "Well, hey, Doug, I'm having a great time. What's going on?" Well, great to see you. Sit down. So Kevin Gibson's going to die, and so I quickly thought, oh, I'm being fired, I guess, but okay, I'll die. So that was the first thing I recall. And the second thing is, you didn't show the rest of the scene, but I have a problem with my acting style more then than it is now, because I've been working on it. It's taken me 40 years to kind of get it a little tighter. I tended to hem and haw and stammer and add things, and it's just uncomfortable for me to watch. But look, I do remember the great fun we had because it was done on location. We did it up in Connecticut. It was cold. And it was really, I guess, almost my first location shot, although I'd done a PBS movie before that. But look, it was exciting. I was surrounded by lovely actors and crew. And
did you have any inkling Julianne would go on to be the success?
Well, the thing is that I mean, truthfully, look, I've never been able to prognosticate, or I never had, you know, I never had real feeling about anything. I just know that she was wonderful, and I certainly didn't realize that she would reach the heights that she did, but not because she wasn't demonstrating it. It was because I just don't have the apparatus to act greatness, you know. Just know that she was always wonderful to work with, and you know, and she deserves everything. Look, the thing about soap operas then and now, but more so then, is that so many actors came through those doors and came into people's homes of every stripe. I mean, Elizabeth Taylor did soaps, and you know, and they provided such, not just comfort, but great daily digestible drama. And it was so it got you so invested that it's really something that I kind of miss. But look, just a lot of great work went into those shows. And like I say, apropos of our early part of the discussion, you had to be fast, you had to show up, you had to go, you had to, and then get rid of it.
You forget what you just learned and learn the next.
One of the I don't want to monopolize this, but one of the things that I was taught, I don't know who taught it to me, maybe Don, maybe he was just messing with me, was that at the end of a lot of scenes there was something that they called the egg, or getting the egg. And the egg was that if somebody said, you know, haven't you heard? Joe fell into a ditch. He may be dead. And then the camera comes in on you. And you're supposed to go. And it fades out. And he or whomever it was said to me, all you have to think of, and can I be crude on this?
Yeah, totally. Please.
All you have to do, and this is a trick, because you can't invest everything with every emotion, but just to get us out, if you get the egg, just think, did I just crap my pants? And the camera will come in. If you're thinking that, you'll be like, and that's it. And if you think, did I just crap my pants? It's usable in a sad one or even a mysterious one. We can't find them. Did I just crap my pants? Or
would not surprise me.
She loves you. Crap my pants. You know, it provides something that the audience it kind of projects onto you. Anyway,
it would not surprise me if it was Mr. Hastings for sure.
Oh, he was. He
yes.
probably laughed like hell when he saw me do it.
I just need to ask: any memories of the late Catherine Hayes?
Wow.
Fans adored her.
You know, I just recall. Again, I was a young guy, and I really was, I would say, intimidated, but rather respectful of the older guard. Now, I had known her from Star Trek as the empath. So right away, I was a huge Trekker then and still am. So I was really taken with how versatile really she was and how lovely. And I always remember Don always referred to her, even when she was in the room, as Miss Hayes. And she said, and he said it with such affection. You know, it wasn't kind of funny or lascivious or flirty. It was just Miss Hayes. It was with real respect and sweetness. I'll never forget that. And she took it. You know, things that I didn't know anything about her, really. I didn't know anything about her private life or whatever. And that's really what I remember. I remember a lot of amazing camaraderie on that set. Yeah.
I love that. Scott Bryce, unfortunately, I told you backstage, cannot make it. He had something pop up, but he did text me and he said we should do a story with the softball picture as a plot twist. So this is a picture I took of Scott and Stephen 39 years ago in Central Park.
That's right. That was when we were on the road for Blue Boy magazine, I think. Holy smokes, we are gorgeous.
I think this was an As the World Turns versus Guiding Light
right
game. Please share the story you told me backstage.
Well, I mean, can we just see the picture one more time?
Yes.
For punishment. Okay, so clearly I was fit from the waist up. From the waist down, I had fairly skinny legs, but that didn't dissuade me from wearing, you know, cutoffs. Now, and a look at the t-shirt. And look at Scott with his open. It's funny. Beefcake. I remember that day. I don't remember the game specifically. I do remember, you know, summer days in Central Park, which were really lovely, and of course playing with on the As the World Turns softball team. I can't imagine how good we were. But I do remember then after the game taking the subway back home to Queens, and on the air-conditioned subway cars in the 1980s, they were probably, you know, covered with graffiti and, you know, people spitting up and all that stuff. And I just remember at one point realizing, as I was hanging onto the strap, looking down at myself thinking, I don't know what kind of fashion choice I made, but I looked like a rough trade, not even rough trade. I was like, I went to school for twinks.
You look like a twink. That is
really
great.
Did, you know, but hey, but a good one and a cute one. So that was fun for me. You know, I mean, and like I was saying before, I was so unaware. You know, I was just dressing for comfort.
I love that. Did you, because you did Broadway in '85, did you do that while you were doing World Turns?
I don't know if they were concurrent. I mean, they were around the same time. I was doing, I understudied The Real Thing on Broadway. I think that was when I was doing it. And that was a great experience too. Being a young actor in New York at that time was really exciting. Because like I said, it still had that old fashioned kind of feel to it, patina, you know, which I always aspired to be a young actor like in the 50s. you go to acting class in the morning, and then you have a radio spot that you're doing, and you have an audition, and then you're appearing at, or you're doing an understudy, and then and you're always busy and very kind of blue collar about it. Nothing highfalutin about that life, and that's what I loved about it. That's what I loved about As the World Turns too. Very blue collar.
You were born and bred New Yorker, so
yeah.
Broadway and all of that just must have meant the world to you.
It meant the world to me. It was, and I had gone to the High School of Performing Arts in Manhattan. It was right in the heart of, it was right near Times Square. So again, it had that old New York feel. And so coming back and being able to work in the city and work on Broadway and go behind the scenes was extra exciting for me. And when you're an understudy, you can show up a little later and go through the, stage door and look in the wings, see how everything works and explore the theater. And that was so enjoyable to me. It was a really good time.
What led to you to move out west? Was it a role?
Well, yes, I auditioned in New York for a play that was being done at the Mark Taper Forum. It was a play called Made in Bangkok by Anthony Minghella, who's a great writer and director, English patient, known for that, who died rather young. But he had written a wonderful play, and I auditioned. And again, I was very brash and kind of funny auditioner, and I got this part of a brash English guy, a real Cockney guy, and came out there. And in fact, I went out there with, I guess, my then wife, Finn Carter, who was on
Sierra. Yeah.
And I think she was doing a movie, and I was doing this play at the Taper. And then this play was Zoe Wanamaker, James Cromwell, John Vickery.
Oh, wow.
And it was really quite wonderful. And that's what brought me out there. And then went back home after that was done. But the next year I auditioned for Wings. So it must have been 89, and went out there and pretty much stayed out there. I mean, after a while, I was back and forth, but stayed out there. Yeah.
Did Kevin and Sierra work together on World Turns, or you?
No, I think maybe we had a moment where we were in the same room during somebody's wedding, of which there were dozens of weddings.
Right. Yeah.
But no, I don't. We never had any interaction.
Yeah, I my brain doesn't really remember that far, but I didn't think Sierra. That's wild. You went to SUNY Purchase. You mentioned School of Performing Arts. Tell me, who are some of the mentors who've helped guide you?
Well, at the High School of Performing Arts, again, I keep talking about this, it still had that old world flavor to it. So it was in an old building, and the teachers there had been theater actors and TV actors in the 50s and 60s who had found their passion in teaching. And they became kind of de facto mentors. But later on, when I went to SUNY Purchase, I had a teacher for 4 years straight who taught acting, whose name was Joan Potter. And Joan was a rather kind of unlikely looking member of the Actors Studio. I think she was an original member. And she was rather unlikely looking because she looked very prim and very proper. She had a slight wag to her head and a beehive hairdo. But she was one of the best actors I've ever seen. And she could put her money where her mouth was. And she was the one who became effectively my mentor. But over the years, I kind of took a kind of an a la carte approach to being mentored by various actors who I would watch and who would occasionally dispense some wisdom. And everybody from, I want to say, Don Hastings to Ken Howard, who I worked with, and Tom Aldridge, who was a wonderful actor who later on found some notoriety on The Sopranos, I think as Edie Falco's dad or whatever. I'm trying to think. Charles Durning was somebody.
Is there anything you, from all those names, is there something you could pinpoint that person taught you?
Well, mostly it had to do with little things that they took the time to tell me. The thing is that the teacher, Joan Potter, who who I went to college with, was somebody who absolutely was there and present as an actual active mentor who really molded and her students and worked with them daily. The tips I received after that were kind of fleeting little tips, to do with hitting your mark or having to do with moving your head so that the editor will cut to you, little things like that, which at the time I may have thought, God, that's so superficial, but now I realize are extremely.
Well, I always think of, you talked about World Turns, being a young actor, just being on that set as a young actor. If acting is your goal, just to watch all of those, Larry and Don and Kathy, it's like you absorb it. You learn just by watching.
That's right. They were modeling the kind of actor I wanted to be. And so they were kind of de facto mentors to me. All the actors that I've watched, that I've worked with or worked alongside, have been instructive, without a doubt. You just have to be lucky enough to be in the space and absorb it, and then try it out yourself. And for me, it took a little while to get the hang of those little things, those technical things.
You mentioned Wings. Could you have imagined the success of Wings when you first accepted that role?
Well, again, no. Like, I couldn't imagine Julianne Moore's meteoric rise. For some reason, for good or ill, I did not have a kind of a foresight to see what it could mean. I just luckily found myself drifting into the places that I wanted to be. And now I found myself doing 4-camera sitcom. And in a way, being on As the World Turns prepared me for that. The presence of so many cameras around, and also my affection for that kind of medium made it easy to kind of work in that world. I had no idea about the success or failure of things. I mean, I never had any idea about my own success or failure. I just was very in the moment.
And it was short, a short 5 years after World Turns, and 172 episodes or so of
Yeah,
Wings?
it was about 7.5 seasons, almost 8 seasons.
Wow. What was the best part of that experience?
Well, it was a bit complicated. First of all, I think I'd been married and divorced at the beginning of it, and then remarried towards the end of it to somebody else. And in between those years, there was great kind of very visible success and affirmation, and money. And also there was a lot of pain. My sister passed away during those years. There were some other kind of dark moments, family moments in those years. So it's hard for me to look at that in such a kind of a simplistic way. I mean, clearly, as an actor, as a performer, there's nothing better than to be on a show that attains a kind of hit status. I was very fortunate to be a part of an industry that I didn't know, but was probably in its last legs even by that time. Even though I'm on the show Chicago Med now, which has the basic bones of a classic network TV show, there's very few of those left. Whereas when Wings was there was ER and Friends and Cheers and Seinfeld and all these amazing shows. That was the world that I now found myself a part of, and so it was incredibly exciting. And plus, it was fun again to meet so many other actors. The thing about Wings was, like As the World Turns, a lot of performers came in and out through the doors. Character people, occasional big shots, and it was really amazing to be a part of that.
Do you appreciate comedy or drama more?
I look, I hold them both in equal esteem in a way. They both have specific requirements, and I've been lucky enough to do both of them and to perform in both genres, and with reasonable success, I suppose. And I have great respect for production. Any place that can produce either drama or comedy. Look, clearly doing a sitcom is way more fun, and the hours are ridiculously short and wonderful, at least for the actors and the crew. The writers are in there 24/7, and they come out of those rooms looking battered and beaten, and but they're writers, so what?
So what? Well, tell us about Dr. Dean Archer. I mean, season 10 of this show, I can't believe that show's already 10 years old.
This is my 4th season as Dean Archer. Dean started as a small role that was only going to have a very brief life. And in fact, it was probably going to end badly for him. And that was my understhanding.
Sort of a Kevin Gibson ending.
Yeah, and maybe even darker, because he had PTSD. He has a lot of issues. And when they were first writing him, he did some really sketchy stuff. I think I secretly removed somebody's liver, or something horrible, But where they saw something in me, and maybe in the character, and they decided to keep me around. And so while he's still very flinty, very kind of hard-edged, he's softened a bit. He's had good storyline with his son, Sean, who's played by Luigi Sotil, who's a fantastic actor. And they even included his ex-wife, played by Paula Marshall, who's also great. And they've made him a staple of the community there on Chicago Med, because he's an irascible kind of a dickhead who's also a really good surgeon, and he may not show his softer side, but it's there, and people were given a glimpse of it, so they like him now. I like him too. I really kind of relate to him.
That's got to feel good as an actor if you know that you weren't supposed to be there long, and then here you have your son, now your wife.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, it's very affirming. And,
were you a fan of Dick Wolf's shows before?
Well, to be honest, I never really watched that much TV or network TV. I did occasionally, and I was even on a couple of Law and Order episodes. I was on 2 of the shows as the same character. I played a lawyer, and but I never really watched. I was, of course, acutely aware of Dick Wolf's presence. It's hard not to be. You'd have to be ignorant of oxygen, but I'm very aware of the world now, and so happy to be a part of it.
Had you spent much time in Chicago prior to this role?
No, the only time I was in Chicago was I did a TV movie. I want to say maybe around 1990 with Helen Hunt, and we shot in the city, and we went to blues clubs and went to Second City, and but I only had the briefest glimpse of it. And since I've been working on Chicago Med, this is my 4th season, I've fallen madly in love with Chicago. And which is heresy for a New Yorker. I'll always be a New Yorker, but this city is beautiful. It has a bad rap, as most places that people who've never been to give it.
Yeah,
it's the people are great. It's just a well-run, beautiful city that really kind of loves itself in the best sense, and I'm having a blast. Until it gets cold, and then it's like being on the surface of Pluto.
Well, if you were, I know it's colder than New York, but if you were a New Yorker most of your life, you'll deal.
Okay, so I thought that was the case, and my first winter was February. It was the height of first winter here. February, the height of COVID. You have 5:30 a.m. calls. It's pitch black. And I'm telling you, when I had to go to wardrobe and say, do you have any kind of you have any long johns or something? They couldn't help but snicker. Look at the New Yorker. So tough. I had to give in, man. I couldn't do it. It's different. It's, New York, you can bundle up and it's kind of romantic and walk past the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. And, not here. You need a full space suit. You need, you need tongs. And it's unbelievable, man. It's not good for human beings. So I don't care how tough you are. However, but if you're born and raised in Chicago, it's like as soon as it's 43 degrees, it's spring, and the shirts come off and everybody's jogging. Madness. Midwestern. Yeah.
I love that. I wanted to read a few fan comments. Lance says, Stephen, I have followed you since you were on World Turns and so happy to see how your career has progressed and grown. Wishes for continued success.
Thank you.
Barbara says, Stephen is an amazing audiobook narrator. His version of it is classic. Do you have a process for doing audiobooks?
I mean, the process. The process is not dissimilar from, the normal acting process, except that it's a lazier approach because I don't pre-read these books. I just go in cold. I know what they're about generally, and I know the tone. I do a bunch of books by the great writer Harlan Coben, and I've become.
Oh, I love his TV series.
Oh, well, they make great movies, his books. And funnily enough, they make these productions in Europe mostly rather than the United States. That said, people devour his audiobooks, and I've done quite a few of them, and I've developed a familiarity with a lot of the characters that recur. But the process is you just kind of go deep because you can. There's fewer distractions when you're reading in a sound booth. And particularly that book, Stephen King's It, which is a massive, it's like 1,200 pages. Has so many characters and so much description that it's a case of immersion. After a while, I don't care if you're an actor or just a regular normal reader, you will find yourself fully invested emotionally in these characters, and you go there. So that was a good. That was a great time, that book, and people seem to like it. So that's.
Do you remember your first audiobook?
I think I can't remember the title of it, but I don't think it was very good.
Well, I was just curious. Did you know you would like doing that when you first?
Yes, because it fell into the same kind of world that I described, the very kind of old blue collar, technical. Microphones and cameras. And one thing that I did do very early on was I dubbed foreign films. I don't know how I got into that, but I provided background voices and even some, main character voices for a few Italian films and French films and some Japanese films, and was able to meet a kind of core group of performers and writers and producers who had done the lion's share of all the kind of Godzilla movies or sword and sandal epics that I watched, that a lot of people watched on TV, that were dubbed and not always great, not always well done. Hey, hey, Hercules, why are you doing that? Hey, put down that rock. Oh, and it was very kind of weird and stilted, but I loved it. And I was able to meet those guys. I met the guy that translated and dubbed Speed Racer, and Japanese cartoons that we watched as kids.
I remember Speed Racer.
Yeah, of course you do.
How long does it take to do the It book? That's, you said, over 1,000 pages.
Well, that was an exception. That was almost 2 weeks, and most of the books take me 3 to 4 days, mostly 3 days. And I just sit there. I don't even take lunch breaks. Once in a while I do. I just go all the way. And I really enjoy it, I have to say.
That's the New Yorker.
That's right. Just go.
I do. Just go. Do it. Get it done.
Go.
Yeah.
You make fun of me for how fast I walk, but that's my New York gait.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You'll appreciate. I was once walking with my uncle and cousin in New York City, and my uncle had worked in the Diamond District, but my cousin was younger than me, and my uncle and I are across, the street already. And we're like, "Where's my cousin?" And she's waiting at the light.
Waiting at the light.
Yeah,
Who waits at the
totally.
light? Yeah, it's funny.
Nobody waits at the light. I was a big fan of the book 13 Reasons Why, and think Netflix did a great job on the series. Kate sent this question. Can you talk about your role as principal? And how did that role as a principal affect you as a father? And she was really asking it sort of, I think, in relation sort of to the shooting yesterday, like thinking of the school.
Yeah. Well, gun violence aside, what was interesting about 13 Reasons Why was that it really addressed, drug use and abuse and self-harm and suicide and all those things that are also plaguing young people and school age people these days. It was interesting for me to, at least play that role. I remember when my sons were in school at the time, when the series was first coming out, there was, and the book, of course, there were emails sent nationwide as a way to kind of not warn the faculty and parents, but just to make them aware that this material is out there, and as can happen, kids can be influenced even negatively by certain material. And so when I got the role of the principal in what I jokingly called the worst high school in America,
Totally.
I mean, don't send your kids there. Look, it was great because of the social impact it had, certainly in its first season, when it made its deepest kind of impact, I think. Look, I looked at it mostly as just a job and a role in that kind of social equation. There is the while it was obviously focused on the students and the turmoil and the complications that they were experiencing. Similarly, my character was often seen as the kind of the straight-laced, again, dickish kind of villain, if there was a villain in the piece. But he really wasn't. He was just a guy from a different generation trying to understand and trying to maintain a sense of order in a place that was frequently in great disorder. So that's how I approached it. And similarly, as a parent of then younger sons, I felt that I felt the same way, that it wasn't for me to try to break them of things or teach them, but just to understand what's happening and why this generation is different and what I need to do to adapt, to understand, so I can intervene or forgive or be taught if necessary. So that was the impact, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I realized, I was thinking, when did I read the book? And I was actually volunteering for the Trevor Project as a counselor on their Lifeline around the time that the book came out, and that's why I read it. Jeffrey, a cult classic. Did you any idea that no, you probably did not, but what was the impact on you playing that character? Because I'm sure you must hear from people in the community of what it meant to see.
I do. I refer to that movie as My Gay Summer. It was fantastic. I mean, talk about fun. First of all, shooting in my hometown, doing a really fun, totally out there comedy with music about AIDS that was also poignant and had amazing cameos from Sigourney Weaver to Kathy Najimy, and of course Patrick Stewart. Brian Batt. And at one point we shot in Central Park during a massive gay pride it wasn't a parade. It was like a festival. I mean, it was amazing. It was just amazing. So it was, funnily enough, considered, a daring for me to do, having, I forget what year. 95 came out in 95. So I was still doing Wings. But it was an early movie to portray the gay experience, one might say, or lifestyle or culture, which was still not quite mainstream, as it is today, and incredibly daring for the movie and the play to approach the subject of AIDS and love and sex with such outrageous humor. Yeah. So look, for me, it was another role and another great challenge and another great opportunity to learn and to work with filmmakers and artists. And that's really
did you hesitate at all at that time in 95?
No. One thing that I may be a little bit timid in real life about things, but as an actor, I'll do anything. I'll if it's exciting and new. And I got a chance to kiss Patrick Stewart.
Did you have anybody, friends? I mean, being a New Yorker, that helped. That I don't know if you talked to anybody before doing it.
No, because look, I've always had gay friends, and I'm in the theater community.
Yeah, right. I mean, you see them every day.
And so I didn't say like, hey, what's this? Or I figured it out pretty quickly. I had a few surprises because we had some heavy makeout scenes. I mean, we had heavy sex scenes, for Christ's sake, like from day one. And believe me, those are difficult whether you're heterosexual or gay or whatever. Or it makes no fucking difference. Excuse me.
Yeah, because you're
with a stranger. You have to be intimate with strangers and
in front of 200 crew.
In front of, a crew holding a boom, and there's and somebody's over here and somebody's over there. So it's simultaneously thrilling and humiliating. But no, there was nothing to research because basically it was the story of a guy searching for love and meaning. And I'm getting choked up now. I don't know why. It's actually a very moving movie, there's some quite beautiful parts. And I'm thinking of my friend Brian Batt, who I knew before the movie because he was actually good friends with Finn Carter. Brian Batt, who played Patrick Stewart's boyfriend, who was in Cats, and Brian was in Cats in real life, And there's a scene where he passes, and oh God, it's really sweet.
Incredible movie. Still holds up, people.
I think so. Technically, to me, it looks anytime I've seen it, it makes me wince a little bit because just the production values makes it look like a Love American style episode a little bit. It's very, we could do better now, but for the time, it was really a fun. Olympia Dukakis was in it. Greg Jabara was in it, and it was a riot. We really had a blast, I got to say.
And I love hearing that. Do you have you've done so much. I mean, is there a dream role you still love to do?
Some of the roles that I really dreamed of doing, I've grown too old to play, whether it's something in Long Day's Journey or I guess I'm technically not too old to play Tom Wingfield in Glass Menagerie, but then it'll really be pushing it. It's a real dream play if I'm Tom and I'm thinking about something that happened 40 years ago. But I don't know. I am looking for some role that I could really sink my teeth into. I played a bunch of heavies over the years, and that was enjoyable until it wasn't. And I really put it out to the universe, and I said, "That's it. I'm done." I played a role on Get Shorty, which was a sadly not widely seen series. Ray Romano was in it. It was great. It was on Epix, EIPX. All due respect to Epix, you can't find it anywhere.
Right.
And so, but I played a particularly heinous guy, and I even said to my friend Davey Holmes, who wrote the show, I said, that's it for me. I can't play these dudes anymore. They're really awful men. I mean, I don't know. I've done it. And so I've been rewarded with better men. And the kind of guy that I like is a guy that has or is seeking redemption, a guy that's seen some shit and has learned to become sensitive, has learned empathy, those type of things. And in many ways, the role on Chicago Med addresses that. Not always, and not always fully, because you're not constantly that, that kind of intensity all the time. But it's in there. So that's been nice. I have actually just put out to the universe, just give me a small role in a really good film, in a big film. When I saw Oppenheimer and I saw all my buddies, playing small senators and I thought, I could do that, There's Scott Grimes. There's Harry not Harry Lauder. Harry Lauder was the Scottish. Anyway, but
it's a great film. Yeah, I get it.
And that's what I love. Again, not being a star, but just
right.
being part of the machine. I love being part of the world.
I love that. Well, let's talk a little politics. I really appreciate you using your voice. I know your dad is a veteran. And I thank him for his service. I know he's not with us, but still amazing. Korea and World War II, right?
Yeah.
What did you learn from him?
I mean, I only learned really what was missing. By that I mean, I only knew what he wasn't for the longest time, and it was only until I want to say about 10 years ago that I started working with an organization called New Directions for Veterans. It's based in Los Angeles, but of course it's nationwide. And they help veterans who are homeless, who are in need of medical assistance, schools, employment. I mean, they really do everything in as apolitical a way as possible. And it was through them that I began to realize what my father was teaching me. First of all, I realized that he had and suffered PTSD for the rest of his life after he'd seen some brutal combat in Korea. And so that made me more empathetic and understanding of what, servicemen and women go through. But my political nature wasn't formed so much through him, but just through my observations. And just I found that I leaned very left, but with an eye towards being a moderate and being open to sane conservatism and all that stuff. And in recent years, it's been really messy and complicated and divided. And I actually believe that we're in a great place now. We were talking earlier, I had the good fortune to slip into the DNC last week through my friends in the Creative Coalition, Tim Daly, Robin Bronk. And I viewed firsthand not just the joy, which I think is an overused and almost misunderstood description, but the relief, the relief that people see that there is a positive humanity out there, that it's not just fear and terror and grievance and division, that one side of the equation is intent on sowing, and they have rather successfully, sadly. But there's way more people who understand that that's not the way to live. It's not the way to run a family. It's not the way to run a business. It's not the way to grow crops. It's not the way to be anything. Have something rooted in fear and terror and xenophobia. I really think we're in a great place with Kamala. But again, as a performer, it's hard to. It's a little tricky because I don't want to dissuade people from liking my work. And in an ideal world, it should be apolitical. But the reality is that whether you're a big famous actor or a background artist, you are a citizen, And we're not billionaires. We pay our taxes, we pay mortgages, we cook food and mow the lawn and take out the garbage and get nagged and all that stuff that everybody does. I don't have a butler, for crying out loud. And one of the things that makes me really particularly angry is when people kind of denigrate me by saying you're a Hollywood liberal, you Hollywood types. And I have to say, listen, Hollywood is a factory town. Hollywood is 95% blue collar, lower middle class or middle class people who are working hard to make ends meet. There are technicians, craftspeople, there are woodworkers and caterers and drivers and fabric makers and you name it. And they form not only the industry, but the ancillary industries that in the community.
Union town too.
Union town, man, and that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood. The idea that people think of Hollywood as being, everybody's snorting coke off, a model's abdomen is bullshit. It's fucking hard. And I've been lucky enough to do reasonably well. But who knows how long that will last? I don't know. So being political now more than ever, you run a real risk at getting people angry at you, or even your bosses who don't want the grief.
Mm-hmm. I was never political myself ever. Like you, sort of coming to understand your dad. My parents were Holocaust survivors, and it took me probably till I was about 28 to fully grasp. But I didn't really do anything at that point, and it really was after Charlottesville. My parents were no longer alive, and I really felt the need. When Charlottesville happened, I didn't have this platform, but I need to use my voice where they can't. I would not be here if it was not for the people who risked their lives,
right,
to save my parents. And on top of it, I'm gay and Jewish at a very difficult time in the world. But I do think it's important to speak up when we see things that are possibly harmful to our future.
I think circumstances have forced people to speak up. And so even speaking to you now, what I'm saying makes me feel better about my opinion that, it's a little scary, or sometimes I shouldn't speak up. But no, I have the right to speak up. My life is, it feels threatened. Our rights are threatened by certain people, and also my children's lives.
Right. Raising children to me at this time is just,
anytime it's murder. I don't recommend it. I used to be that guy that said, "Oh, are you married? Or you got kids?" No more. I don't have kids.
Well, before I let you go, tell me about your two boys. They didn't follow in acting, but they are creatives, right?
Yeah, my two sons have become really gifted musicians, and I'm not kidding. It's such a relief not to have to lie. Oh yeah, they're really good. They're excellent musicians. My younger son, Alfie, attends Berklee College of Music in Boston, and he got in, as a jazz drummer playing Whiplash, ridiculous. And he's studying and living the life of kind of like a college jazz musician. That college is, first of all, renowned and full of amazingly talented people, of which he is one among. His brother, Jack, who goes by the name Jack Xander with an X, has he's pursuing the life of a I want to say an indie rocker in LA, and doing well. He's he's figuring it out. I look at him and I see myself, except he's way prettier and way better, way more accomplished an artist than I ever was. His music, in my opinion, falls somewhere between Beck and Bowie. And he's kind of brilliant, and his mom and I are both like gobsmacked that we've made these kids. I have to give her great credit. Juliette Honan is her name, and she used to work for MTV, and she's the one that forced instruments on them, but they took. And so,
they don't always take.
They don't always take, but it took with these guys, and I'm grateful that they have a creative education, a creative outlet. They can't flush a toilet, but they're great musicians.
That's hysterical. Stephen, it is such a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry Scott couldn't join us. I would love to.
Yeah, me too. Fans would have loved to have seen you two together. Definitely give him a ring.
I will. And you know what? I think if I get together with Scott, we'll dress up in the same outfits from that photograph, and we'll do a before and after. How's that? How nauseating would that be?
See which one of you kept it up.
Let me tell you, I almost said honey. Let me tell you something, honey. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody. I mean, cutoffs? No, I don't even take my clothes off when I shower.
Well, I will tell you, when Scott was looking at the picture, he's like, "Wow, we were good looking back then."
That's right.
Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. What a pleasure to meet Stephen. Don't forget, Chicago Med premieres September 25th. Don't forget, there's also a bonus episode of The Locker Room tonight when Emmy Award-winning producer, writer, and director Jody Small stops by to tell us about her powerful one-hour documentary, The Storm in the Boats, which captures the raw, emotional, and diverse experiences of New Jersey residents during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you haven't yet subscribed to the YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And if you like audio versions, just search The Locker Room on your favorite podcast app. I'll see you tonight at 7. Thanks for watching, everybody, and be safe.